I always knew that my mother's side of the family was Black, and from Peru, but I never stopped to think what that meant for me or my identity. I started to realize that identity is very complex. For some, it can be an easy idea to grasp, but for me, it continues to be a continuous journey. As a college student, I first began to learn, study, and reflect about my cultural heritage. As I was speaking to a professor and telling him about my family and showing him pictures, he said, "Oh, so you're Afro-Peruvian." It was the first time I had heard the term in my life. I did not know what to say, so I just agreed with him. After this conversation, I thought a lot about what this term meant in relation to my own self-identity. I thought about how identities are sometimes thrust upon us by other people. How could something I was just discovering be self-evident to my professor? I almost felt embarrassed that I had never encountered the term Afro-Peruvian before. My encounter with this term sparked deep introspection and reflection in me. Even today, I find myself struggling with how I identify. It is a journey that I will continue to explore. People ask me, "Where are you from?" And even though it can seem like such a simple question, it is a question that constantly has me on my toes. I usually start off by saying, "Well, I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, but both of my parents are from Peru. My mother's side of the family is Afro-Peruvian, so I guess you could say that I would be considered biracial." To me, that seems like such a long answer to give, but I want to make sure that I give credit to all of the aspects that make me, me. I myself felt I did not fit into my family. Being of a lighter skin complexion compared to my family members, I did not see how I fit in while growing up, especially when compared to my cousin Regina. We were always dressed alike because we were only a year apart and our mothers were sisters. At first, I saw no difference between us. I played with my cousin all of the time and we were very close. Deep down, I felt that my abuelita Faustina, my grandmother, preferred Regina over me because Regina looked so much like her. I felt like no part of my abuelita was seen in me. As a result, I remember trying to tan to get darker. In college, I came to realize that Black comes in all shapes and sizes and that Afro-Latinidad is more about culture than about skin color. I may not be the mirror image of my abuelita, but my Afro-Peruvian roots are vital to my self-identity. I have expressed in different ways how out of place I felt in my family because of my skin complexion. I was so consumed by the idea that I was an outsider that I needed verbal acceptance from my family. I did not realize that I did in fact already have the affirmation I had always longed for. My cousin Luis Alberto has always called me Zambita. At first, I did not pay much attention to it. I thought it was a Peruvian thing. In fact, Zambita is a term used to affectionately describe people who are of mixed African and Amerindian descent. In other words, accepting the fact that the individual is Black and Indigenous. I never really thought about that until I became invested in this project. My cousin Luis Alberto's nickname for me was precisely an acceptance of my mixed ethnicity. Afro-Latinidad and Afro-Latino histories differ by country and family. In fact, Afro-Latino culture can be separate from a country's national culture, with transitions and customs of its own. When I watch Afro-Peruvian singer Eva Young perform, what comes across is the pride and vibrancy of this unique cultural expression. In the Orgullosamente Somos Afro-Peruanos video, many people had a lot of positive things to say about their Afro-Peruvian identity. They express that being Afro-Peruvian is joy, diversity, cultural heritage, family, passion, talent, memory, history, present, it is future, it is life, it is being human. In other cases, though, being separate or different translates into cultural and ethnic marginalization. In some cases, though, Afro-Latino culture is invisible. In the Orgullosamente Somos Afro-Peruanos article, it highlights that in places like Piura, Peru, 26% of Afro-Peruvian children are not enrolled in school, and up to 70% of Afro-Peruvians do not seek medical attention for fear of discrimination. The article specifically mentions the region of Piura. This issue permeates the country and other parts of Latin America. These statements make it easier to understand why Afro-Peruvians feel like second-class citizens. Many may not feel safe or feel as if they have the same opportunities. Brenda Schmidt expresses in her article, Afro-representations in and around Cusco, a discussion about the existence and non-existence of Afro-Andean culture in Peru. That most people neglect the reality that there are Afro-descendant inhabitants in the Andes. Schmidt makes a point to express that in an Afro-Peruvian perspective, Cusco is a stronghold of Peruvian indigenismo that identifies with its Incan heritage and is not part of a pluralistic society. The history of invisibility and lack of representation continues in the words of my mother, who comes from a black family, but has also said to me in the past, "Quiero que arregles tu raza," I want you to fix your race. The idea of her wanting to fix my race resonates with Latin Americans' obsession of whitening, but also speaks to histories of discrimination of Afro-Latinos. Because of personal experience, my family fears that I face discrimination because of who I am. Unfortunately, in society, most acceptances and opportunities arise to those of a lighter skin complexion. Interestingly enough, Peru celebrated their 150th commemoration of the abolishment of slavery with great pride, celebrations, and festivals. Schmidt says that, as a result, more Peruvians are starting to accept, even openly acknowledge, the African presence within Peru. Most Afro-Peruvians are referred to as negros or negras. In Spanish, I feel the words give off a stronger connotation than black does in English. Many would say that because I have an Afro-Peruvian background, it is okay for me to use these terms, but it makes me uncomfortable. I prefer to use the word moreno or morena, which is another word to refer to a person with black or indigenous heritage. For biracial and ethnic individuals like myself, there is no single or generic term that truly expresses or explains our identity to others. In my studies, I've become increasingly aware of practices of cultural essentialism and cultural reification. In the first case, this implies reducing an entire culture to a single category or a specific term. In the second case, it refers to treating culture as if it were a thing, something set and unchanging. However, the nickname my cousin Luis Alberto gave me, Zambita, best reflects for my hyphenated identity. Maybe I'll come to own this term one day and use it to actively explore the complexity of Afro-Latinidad, as well as challenge people's ideas of ethnicity and race. Today, there are times when I still struggle with my self-identity, but it is safe to say that I consider myself Afro-Latina and Afro-Peruvian, rather than just Latina and Peruvian. It took me a while to get to this point, but the journey was worth it.